So, good evening everyone. Good evening Sir Alohado. Good evening classmates if you guys are watching this video. Today I would like to explain to you, showcase to you this activity from CC105 Final Periods Activity number 1. So, the activity is about creating a database and tables with constraints using only Java. Java with no help from any other third-party device like PHP MyAdmin. So over here we have one file here, TCU student record system, and this is where all of my codes are in. Only one class file. So before we start explaining the code, I would like to demonstrate how the code works. Oh, my bad. I would like to showcase how the program works. So let's start. So we already had it run here. So checking if database exists, TCU database already exists. Therefore, would you like to delete it? For demonstration's sake, we will delete it. So over here, we have our already made database and tables. So now we are going to delete it. Yes, TCU database has been deleted. Please restart to see the changes. So let us just restart our browser web page here, and as you can see, no more TCU underscore BSCS 2022 database. Completely dropped and deleted from our MySQL server. Now we will restart our program. Checking if database exists. Database does not exist. So shall we create a new database then? Yes. So yeah, it's been created. Let's check. And here we go. No tables found in database, so we only have the database but not the tables. So let us create the tables. So yep, course info, student info, and student course tables have been created. Let us check. And there we go. They are created. So let us check if the constraints are correct. We will find out by going to the designer tab, and here we go. Tables are now related to each other, in which the student course have two foreign keys, ID from the student info table and the course ID from the course info table, and combine them together and you form a composite primary key. So that's enough showing off. Let us go back to our program. So would you like to add some data? Yes, please. I would like to add some data. Let's say I want to add a new course. So let's say TBL course info. So let us just type in the columns. We have course ID, course name. Let's try our best and not be wrong here. Units, lab hours, tech hours, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be it. Column values. Let's see here. Course ID would be CC105. This the name would be information management DB SQL. Okay, closing quotation mark. Units, we have 3. Lab hours, we have 4, and 2 lecture hours. For that, data has been added to TBL course info. Very nice. Okay then, we're gonna add some data. Would you like to add data again? Yes. Another confirmation here since we're just looping here. Sorry if this seems a bit redundant. Let's just say yes. So table name, I would like to add student. I would like to add myself in our table. So student info, columns would be, let's double check. ID, wrong one, my bad. Student ID, first name, middle name, last name, birthday, email. Got it. So we got the student ID, the first name, the middle name, the last name, birth date, and lastly the now this just add it there. 210317. First name would be Jennifer Anthony, middle name Amit, last name Benton, birth date would be 2003, 0106, and we got the email. Oops, want to get an error here. Now we want to add our email, which is jeffhoyt@gmail.com. Enter that. There we go. Data has been added to table student. Would you like to add data again? Nope. Okay. Would you like to print the table? Yes, please. Let's print the table. Table name. Let's see the course info. There we go. Would you like to print again? Yes. Let us print the TBL student info. Whoops. Oops, wrong one. That should have been yes. TBL student info. There we go. Very nice. So let's just say N, and that's the end of it. So yes, it works properly. Just to make it clear, let's do this. So that add some data. So this time it didn't ask us if we want to create tables because tables already created. So let's add some data. I wanna add a data in the student course. Columns would be the ID, course ID, section, and course. Commas ID would be 210317. Course ID CC105. Section would be F2021, and lastly the course, which is BSCS. It should work. Enter. Yep. Data has been added. Nope. Would you like to print? Yes. Since we didn't get any error, the constraints and the table itself should work properly. So let's just print the table. TBL student course. And there we go. Working properly. Now let's just end it. And that's it for the demonstration. I will now explain the code in a deep manner. So let us go to the very beginning of our code here. So for our code, we only need a few imports here. We need the entirety, well, not the entirety, but a selection of the SQL package, logging, which we don't actually need, and this one. We do need the scanner for some inputs that we demonstrated earlier. That's it. So this is our main method. So let us first begin with the connection. To get let's get to our connection method. Over here. So for this activity, I made two my connection methods. They are basically the same methods, except they are overloaded, meaning they have different parameters and a bit of difference in their code, but they are the same thing. We can call or encapsulate the my connection method with or without a string argument. So let us first begin with the one without an argument. So some declaration here. Connection con is null. Let's start it with that. As for declaration, so first we had to initialize our JDBC driver, which is the link over here. Then we have a bunch of strings for our driver manager get connection. So first we have the string URL, in which we only have the URL for the server itself without any tables. This connection, specific connection without any arguments, will be used to make a database. So we have the username and we have the password. Just put it in the driver manager inside con and we're done. That is our connection for making a database. For the second one, the one with the argument string db underscore name, the only difference here is that we have to specify what database we need to access it in order to make the tables. So for over here, we're asking for an argument, database name, the database. Then we just add that to our string URL. And with that, we'll be able to access our database. So now let's move in to our main method. So we got the instantialization here, making a scanner object, which is get. Then we create the connection object with con, prepared statement ps, and a bunch of declarations. Result set, which we never use, so but we're just gonna leave it there. Got a bunch of strings, which is the db name, the db check, the answer, SQL, and loop answer. These strings we'll encounter later on. Lastly, the boolean result, check result. So enclosed in a try-catch block, here are the codes. So first, we put a value in the string db name, which is the name of our required database, which is TCU underscore BSCS 2022. After that, we put the db name inside the check db method, and then whatever the result is, we put it inside the check result boolean variable. So let's check out how the check db method works. So over here we have a very short method right here named checkDB, in which we are asking for an argument with string argument, specifically the database name. So just some instantializations here. We got the connection con, result set rs, and of course another check result to store our any boolean variables that we will need. So we have the db check here used to compare to our db name. For now it's null. So inside the try-catch block, we have our code. So first we have, using the result set, we retrieve the metadata, and inside the metadata we get the catalogs in which all the database are found in our server. As you I don't know if you've noticed, but for the connection here we use the one without the database argument. Therefore we are just accessing the server and not the database. So, and therefore we can use this line of code. And since we have a result set now, we will now put it in a while loop where we get all of the database in our catalogs. After we get it, we will check if we will sort in DB check, and then we will compare the DB check's value to the DB name. If we find the name of our database to be in the server in the catalogs, we will just put the check result as true, and then we will break the while loop, or else it will just be false. And after that, after everything is done and settled, we will just return the check result back to the main method over here, where we store it in the check result variable in the main method. After that, we just print a bunch of stuff, and then we will now compare. We will now check the check result. If it is false, then it means it doesn't exist in the server yet. And so we will run a bunch of codes where will ask us if we want to create a database. If you say yes, we'll just collect it here, make it lowercase. If it is yes, it will create the database using a bunch of query codes. So for example here, we have our SQL code here. Create database. If not exists, this code is important. TCU-BSCS 2022. This is the name of our database. The if not exists statement here, it ensures that if we create a date, it will only create a database if this database does not exist yet. If it exists, this code will not do anything. Nothing. So after that, using the prepared statement, we just prepare our SQL code here, and then we execute it. After that, it's just gonna print out database has been created. Sorry for the typo here. Database has been created. Okay, in the case that it already exists, we have an else statement here connected to our if statement, where we print out it already exists. Would you like to delete it? So we just get our input here, either y or anything else. We make it lowercase, and then we compare it. So if our input is equals to yes, then we drop our database or delete it. So we have our code here. Drop database if exists. This is the polar opposite of if not exists, in which it will only initiate the whole SQL statement here if and only if TCU-BSCS 2022 exists in our server. So over here, we just prepare our statement and then we execute it. Then we just print the database has been deleted, and then we just exit the whole program to allow for restarting it. After that, either after we created or deleted the database, if we want it again, we will now proceed to the check table part of our main method. So here we will check if the three tables, TBL course info, TBL student info, and TBL student course exist. So over here we have our check table method. We will now go there and show you the code. So under the check table method, we have a public static boolean check table method. Over here, we make our connection in which we have the argument, the DB name, which is TCU-BSCS 2022, a bunch of objects, result set, prepared statement, and of course the check result, and table check for checking. Oops. Then we have the int for some for the loop. So first we have what we have here is a string array containing the 3 required tables in this activity. Over here we just put in a try catch block. So here's our SQL code, which is show tables. All it does is list down all the tables in a database. Since we have stated our database here, we can freely use the show tables SQL code. Just prepare it and then execute it. Once we execute it, we put all the information inside the result set. And then we just put it inside a while loop where we get the value of the table name, put it in table check, and then inside the for loop over here, we will compare TBL check to all elements inside the TBL array. So if TBL check is equals to the value of one of the elements in TBL array, we will just add 1 to our counter up here. So with that, just loop around it, add the count if applicable, and then once we reach the end of our while loop over here, and then after checking, we will just check if the count is equals to 3. If not, we just our check result will still be false. But if it's true, the check result will be true, and the whole while loop will stop. So the whole purpose of this is that we will check all the tables in our database, compare it to our required tables here. If we have the complete tree in our database, then that means that we have all the tables. If not, then we are either missing one or we don't have them at all. So after that, we just return the check result back to our main method. So over here, we just check the value of check table. If it's false, then that means there are no tables yet. Therefore, we will prompt the user if they want to create the tables. We'll now get the answer using the scanner. If the answer is equals to yes, then it will go to the create table method, encapsulated. So let us go there right now. So over here in our public static void create table method, here we will create all the necessary tables. So over here we have our connection con, in which we are inside the database. So inside the try catch block, we will now initiate a bunch of SQL queries. So of course we have the first statement that we'll use. So our code here is pretty long, but I'll try and explain it. This will be applicable to all of it with a bit of difference that I will tackle later. But first, the syntax. Create table. So in order to create the table, you must write in create table. And of course, we need to have the if not exist. This will ensure that we will not have any errors in case the table already exists. So this is our name of our table, table course info. And then we just concatenate it to the next line over here. We have our column course ID inside the parenthesis, in which it is a varchar with the limit of 30 characters. And it must not be null. It must have a value inside, or else it will give us an error. Next is the course name, which is, or this is a course ID, yep. And then we have our course name, which is a varchar, limit of 70, not null. Units, integer, maximum of 10 digits, not null. Lab hours and lect hours, both integers with 10 digits only, and both are not null. And now, using the primary key keyword, we put our primary key inside the parentheses. In this case, it is course ID. So our code is complete. We will now prepare the statement, execute it, and therefore it is created. Next is the second SQL code. This one creates a table named TBL student info. So over here we have a student ID, which has a maximum of 11 digits integer. It is not null and it auto increments. I allowed the auto increment for testing purposes if I want to add multiple values, but this is actually not necessary since in a real life scenario we won't have an auto increment system since all students have a very unique student ID. But since I was testing around with the database, I allowed auto increment. Next is the first name, varchar, a maximum 30, not null. Everything here is not null. Middle name, varchar 30, last name, varchar 30, birth date, which is the data type date, and it is not null. Email, varchar 30, not null. And finally, the primary key, which is the student ID. So after that, we just prepare the statement, execute it, and say the table has been created. And lastly, we got the SQL code number 3, which creates a table named table student course. So this is going to be the table in which it contains the two foreign keys, the constraints specified in the activity instructions. So of course, we have the ID, which is an integer with a maximum of 11 digits, not null. Everything here null. The course ID, varchar limit of 30, section varchar limit of 30, and course varchar limit of 30. So in this table, we have two columns as a primary key. This is what we call a composite primary key, in which we have two columns in which it requires a combination of the two or more columns in order to form a unique identification or primary key. Since ID on its own allows to may have duplicates in our student course table, and course ID can also have duplicate entries in this table. We cannot use them as primary key on their own. Therefore, we must combine them in order to create a unique identity for this table, for each row of data in this table. And now we have our constraints here. We have two constraints, which is specifically the foreign keys. So here we have the keyword constraint, the name of our constraints here. So we have TBL student course, DB foreign key 1. So that's just the label of our constraint here. We can name it anything we want, but since we are following a standard here, we are going to use the default for phpMyAdmin. So for the first foreign key, use the foreign key keyword, and then we state what column here will be considered the foreign key. And then we will state what table it is referring to and what specific column in that table we are referencing. So over here, the course ID is being referenced from the table course info and column course ID. For our second foreign key, we have our ID column in student course referencing the student ID in our student info table. So that's all I have to remember for constraints. And so we just prepare it, execute it, and say it's been created. And so that's it for creating the table. Let's now move on to our next part of the main method, which is over here. So if the tables exist, it will just prompt the user that the tables already exist. Next one is the insert query if needed. This part of the main method basically allows the user to be able to insert data in the tables they want. So first, we're gonna put it inside the do while loop because the user might want to put in multiple datas in different tables all at once in this program in one session. So we want it to loop as long as they want and close the moment they want to stop. So over here, we will just prompt the user if they would like to add some data, yes or no. If it is yes, then we'll just ask for the table name, store it in string tname, ask for the columns, put it in the column string, and then the column values, and store it in the string val. And then we now encapsulate it. We put the table name, column, and the value in the argument as arguments in the add data method. So let us move on to our add data method. So here in our add data method, as I showed you earlier, it always asks for three variables: table name, the columns, and the value. So this method here is a very simple insert query, which in which its purpose is to simply just insert data in a table. So first, we create our connection here in the table TCUBSCS. We initialize some objects, and then we create our string here, our SQL string. So we use the code insert into to insert data in a table. Then we just specify the table name, and then the columns inside the parentheses, and then the values, where we put all the values in our value inside the parentheses. After that, we just prepare it, then we execute it and just say if there's a error, data has been added to the table name. In case of problems with either maybe the table name, the columns, or the values, we have an SQL exception here to handle it. Here it will print out the error message to help the developer to see the problem of where the error began. So after that, it just inserts the table, and now after that we just continue on to our main method. So after saying yes and adding a new data here, we just print out another prompt. Would you like to add data again? It will ask for another input, put it in loop underscore answer. Then if they say yes, then according to our while loop condition here, it will loop again. If it says no, then the loop will stop and it will proceed to the next one. So over here we have the printing codes. So we have another do while loop here in case the user wants to print another table. So over here we prompt the user if they want to print the table. If they say yes, then it will ask for the table name, and then it will put it as an argument in the print table method. If they don't want to print any table, they will simply end the loop. So let's now proceed to the print table. table method. Where are you? Over here. So as we've shown earlier, uh, the print table method here asks for a string, a, a string containing the name of the table. So over here we establish our connection inside the database TCUBSCS. Then over here we have a small block of code uh, for checking if the table exists. We have a string here of the tables. We just compare the value of the table argument here to all the elements of the string tables, and then if all of it is equal and therefore adds up to 3, uh, then it does not exist. If it is equal, then it will do nothing, but if it is not equal, then it will add 1 to the counter. And once it reaches number 3, then that means that this table is not part of the database. Therefore, we'll just end the program. So after testing it, let us now assume that we have the table we've inputted is part of the database. We will now proceed to the next part of the code. So over here we have a bunch of instantializations. We have the result set, return statement, and the string SQL code. So here all our code is basically select asterisk, meaning everything, select everything, all the columns and rows data from our table argument of or whatever table you inputted in the prompt in the main method. After that, we just prepare our statement, and then we execute it, and then put all the information in our result set. So once we've executed the query here, we will now move to the to a switch case block here. So the switch case block here uses table as its value for comparison. So the purpose of this switch case is to properly print the tables since all of them have different number of columns, column names. Yes, it just specifically prints the table depending on what table you are asking for. So for example, here we have the student info. So we just have the print the label here, and now we will loop through the result set of the table student info. We get the strings, put them in their respective strings, and then we put them inside a string array named row. After that, we print some separator here. We now specify how many space we have for each cells in our data in our print table. And over here inside our for loop here, we will now print our data. So here's how it works. So first we get our data length by determining the length of the data we're currently checking here in this row array. And then if the row is greater than 20, then the space, which initially is 20, becomes 50. Else it stays as 20. After that, we create a cell space over here. We store the space that is left after we we find the difference between the space and the date and the space occupied by the data, and then we just store it in our cell space. After that, we just the print out the data, and then the method repeat here. This method here, all it does is multiply how many space is to be occupied based on based on the remaining space after it's already been occupied uh, by the row data over here. So let's go to our repeat method here. Let's see what it does. So here it is, the repeat method. All it does is get the amount of times a string will be multiplied, and then the word or string that will be multiplied. Over here, we will return a newly created string in which for each amount of chars we will replace the 0, this is a Unicode for 0, with the word we want to multiply. In our case, we want it to be an empty string or a string containing a space. So depending on how many count you want, it will multiply it to multiply the string to that amount. And with that, it will ensure that our table is very well organized and fits our screen. So after that, just prints it and prints the space. After that, we have our finishing separator, and there it just says done printing, and it breaks the switch case. This is also how the other tables in our switch case works. So for course info, we have 5 total columns: course ID, course name, units, lab, lecture hours. Put in an array, and then we put it in a for loop in order to print them in a very organized manner. And same with the student course. You get the string, put it in their respective string variable, then we input them in the string array, and then we just print them in an organized manner. Yeah, that's it. If in case the table does not exist and it somehow bypassed the first checking, then by default it will just print out prompt the user that the table does not exist. And yes, that's it for the code. At the very end of our main method here, give a moment, we'll just ask the user if they want to print another table. If yes, it will loop again. If no, then it will just simply end the program. So for one last time, let us demonstrate it. So our database already exists. Let's just delete it. You can see here it exists earlier, but now once you reload, it doesn't exist anymore. So let us restart our program now. So the database does not exist. Would you like to create it? Yes. There are no tables. Therefore, would you like to create the tables? Yes. And as you can see here, they've been created. Double check. And there we go. The database and the tables have been created. Would you like to add some data? Let's add some data. DBL student info. We got the student ID, the first name, middle name, last name, birth date, and the email. And then we want the values to be student ID 21. Let's say ourselves 210317. First name Jennifer Anthony. Then we have middle name Amit, last name Renton, and birth date, which is 2003 January 6. Lastly, the email, which is japoit and gmail.com. That it has been added to table student. Would you like to add data there? Yep. Are you sure you want to add some data? Yep. Okay, so table name. So TBL course info. So we have the columns course ID, course name, units, lab hours, lec hours, and then we have the values CC105 plus 2 CC103, intermediate programming, advanced Java. Then we have the units, which is 3. We have a lab hours of 4 hours and lecture hours of 2. Yep, data has been added. One last time. Table name TPL student course. It has the columns ID, course ID, section, and the course. Then we need the value. So we have 21. Since we only have one data for each tables, we only have me, which is 210317, then a course ID of CC103, and a section of F2021, and course of PS. Yep, since the datas are correct and existing, it's been successfully added. So, would you like to add data again? Nope, I'm done. Would you like to print the data? Yes, let us print all the data. So, table name TBL student info. Dang, there we go. So, yes, I would like to print again. Table name TBL course info. Yep, there we go. And lastly, TBL student course. And there we go. All of it are correct. So let's just try making an error here. Table name, let's say table student info instead of TBL. This table does not exist. Yep. And yeah, that's it. That's it for activity 1 for the final period. I hope this presentation has been very satisfactory and very clear in the way I explained it. Thank you, Sir Lojado, and my classmates and the internet for helping me out go through this activity. It has been very insightful. I've learned a lot in this activity, and I hope to be able to do more in the future. Thank you and goodbye.